Jack, I hear you speak, and I feel like for most people, this is the dream. This is where we want to be. And I also want to call in the other side of the spectrum, which is calling out any kind of delusion. Because somebody could be listening to this and going like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I just want to speak. I just want to have fun and I just want to travel. So I'm not going to do any of these low activities. And so, but then there's none of the high paying activities. There's no lineup of speaks and talks that are coming up. There's not a list of clients. You're kind of at the early stage. And it's almost like you're not doing those necessary early stage activities, which is, I would call, a bit more grindy. So do you have a process or a call out for anybody who might be living in this kind of delusion, hearing your story and realize, oh yeah, I don't want to do anything because I'm a high value person?
That's so good. All right. So I between 26 and 46, I built and ran six pretty sizable companies. Largest sales force was 2,600. Biggest balance sheet was 23 billion. And I got wasted on it. Like I didn't want to do it anymore. You couldn't pay me enough money. I just wasn't having fun anymore. And so I just pulled the plug and I figured I'd take a year off and figure out what I'm going to do next. And all of a sudden the phone started ringing. People were going, hey, if you're not doing anything, could you come in and talk to our salespeople at this company? Could you talk at this trade group? Could you do this? Could you? And it was all around the speaking business. And after 3 or 4 months, I said to Bonnie, gosh, I'm liking doing this. I think I'm going to do some more of this. And that's how I got into the business. But as rosy as that sounds, compared to what I was making in the entrepreneur running a business world, I characterized myself as the starving speaker. My first 2 to 3 years as a speaker, I had to be in the muck so deep because I didn't have a big portfolio of business. Look, I'm going to speak, I'm going to travel, and I'm going to have fun. All right. Well, you don't have any speaking gigs to travel to. You don't have to worry about having travel. And by the way, if you don't have any speaking gigs, you don't have any cash flow. So the fun is out of the party as well. All you're going to do is sit home and watch TV or something. My first marathon, I've run 100 marathons. My first marathon was at 46 years old. And why did I end up running a marathon at 46? Well, that's because when I exited the business entrepreneur side and got into the speaking business, I was so stressed out that the only way that I could operate after 12-hour days, 6 days a week, trying to launch my speaking business, I just had to go run to just like the stress was significant, right? So yeah, a good call out on me, speak, travel, fun. But it took several years to get to that level. And look, it took a lot of work to go from 32 customers in the newspaper delivery to 275 in a year. That's knocking on a whole bunch of doors and getting a lot of rejection and doing all the things you need to do on the sales side. So I just look at each thing in life. At 58, I did my first Ironman. But what's interesting about that is I didn't know how to swim at 58. Now, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 3.8 kilometer swim on the clock, right? And then a 180 kilometer bike and then a 42K run all together, right? Now I was a runner and I figured I could get back on the bike and figure it out, but swimming was a whole thing under itself. My first year in the Ironman sport, trying to get to that level, was a lot of absolute grunt work. It's not something that you could delegate. It was not something you give to the assistant. And there's a bunch of stuff that needs to take place in building whatever it is you are building in your life, where you've got to put in the work for years in order to get to the stage where all of a sudden look, Jim Collins calls it the flywheel, right? And in the beginning, you're struggling to move it. Well, at this stage of my career, that flywheel is just ripping and rolling, right? And so I get to pick and choose. There's only so many gigs that I'm going to take in a year. And then I'm dealing them out to other people because I just don't want to invest as much time doing that. But that's not the way it was in the first 2-3 years. It was starving speaker time.
Jack, I love that we were able to address both sides of this coin because, yeah, I love that we have a vision and we get pulled towards that. And I think, like I said, this is the goal. But actually acknowledging that hard work, I think just makes a perfect picture of what is the grind that's required for us to get to the level that you speak of, which is absolutely amazing, the journey that you've been on. I have a question I wanted to ask because, discipline, being hungry, and caring for people enough to push them into a direction that you feel is in their best interest, which we spoke about earlier in the call, is kind of a balance between, going out there and being kind of impatient as opposed to most people who just wait for things to come to them. So as an effective person, you're going to be impatient. But at the same time, when you speak about the results that you have in your life, there was a certain level of patience, I would imagine, was required for you to understand that as we're going towards a larger goal, we have to understand certain things take time. I just want to hear your thoughts around your relationship with being patient versus being a go-getter.
Yeah. I don't know whether you're aware of it, but last year I released my most recent book. And it's called Jack Daly's Life by Design. It's the first book that's not about business that I wrote. It's about following a process and living an intentionally led life that is exceptional. And it's my life story combined with the templates and the process to literally sit down and design an exceptional life. Well, in there's a number of examples of exactly what you're talking about. For example, I watched Julie Moss crawl across the finish line and 100 yards before the finish line of the Ironman to end up in second place, and she was leading the race in Hawaii. And I just watched and said, my God, what a human being is capable of doing. I wonder if I could ever do something like that. And then a couple days later, I said, bullshit, I'm putting that in my bucket list and I'm going to do that. But at the time, my kids were young. I was building a business. I was hiring and leading people. And there's only 168 hours in a week. And I couldn't see myself finding the time to allocate to do the proper preparation on the Ironman. So that's a 25-hour-a-week training schedule, and there's only so many hours in a day. So I put it in the bucket list and said, okay, when I don't have my companies and the responsibility to my employees, and when I don't have my kids at home because I want to spend time with them when they're younger, then the only person that's making a sacrifice is my wife, Bonnie, and she would make any sacrifice for me and be supportive. And that's why it took me until 58 to start the Ironman. It was sitting out there. It was tangible. It was a goal. And I knew I was going to get to it, but it didn't meet the priorities of the day at that stage of my life. We have the same challenge in our businesses. There are certain times that we need to knuckle down on stuff. And there are times where, well, I'd like to be able to do that, but I'm not positioned well enough to do that. So that'll have to wait for another time. Okay? Choices.
And I think a bit of a delayed gratification tolerance to work on the things that are the most important.
In 2000, I have this because it happened a week ago. One of my partners gave me this medal that says the top 100 golf courses. So in the year 2000, to be exact, I started on February 27th in 2000, and I said I'm going to play the top 100 golf courses in the U.S. And 2 weeks ago, less than that, I finished it on August 13th of 2023. So there were the 4 courses that I finished up 2 weeks ago. Now, that's 23 years in the making to get that bucket list item done. But in the first 5 years, I had over 50 of the courses done. But then other things started to take prioritization. And I had to backpedal and backstore these. And eventually, and then we have a pandemic that gets in the way and so forth and so on. And so other things start to take more priority. So I've got a bucket list and I've got life plans. And then I now narrow them down to 5-year and 10-year plans and then 1 year. And some things don't make the cut. Karen and I are going to do the hike into Machu Picchu this year. Now, it'll be my third time. It'll be Karen's first. And while she's younger than I am, she ain't like 20 years younger than I am. She's 6 years younger than I am. And we've not been to Prague, neither one of us, and we hear all these great things about Prague. And when we sat down and did our goals, I said, hiking into Machu Picchu is a lot more of an undertaking than visiting Prague. So even if I need a crutch or some wheelchair, I can roll around Prague, but we can't do Machu Picchu like that. So we better put Machu Picchu in this year. So we had to push Prague back into 2024. Prague's been on our list for 5 years now. Right? So it's that type of discipline. That's about the half a dozen times now I've used the word. But that's the kind of discipline that is required to identify the trade-offs on what are the HPAs in maximizing your life or maximizing your business.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.